Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to this podcast series with Dennis O'Connor, Awakening in Health. My name is Shay Ryan Douglas from the Earth Heroes TV network. Today's an exciting conversation which we're going to dive deep into, all about understanding depression and some of these so-called incurable chronic diseases that we're faced with. Dennis is a nurse practitioner of 20 years and is now on the journey of truth seeking and telling and sharing and understanding life through the lens of experience. Dennis has tremendous experience being born in Ireland and also now living here in Australia. So he's got lots to share, which is really exciting. And we're just opening up the conversation. Today's all about having the conversation around these topics. And what is really exciting is that we've had many of these topics before. So if you wanted to check out some of the old videos that we've done, you're invited to have a look at those on YouTube. I'll send the link in the comments. Some great quality content there that we've covered and we've discussed already. What have we talked about already, Dennis?
We talked about the immune system. We talked about some failings in the health system. We've touched on truth. We've talked about psychopaths and bankers.
Vitamin D,
cholesterol. So we're getting through some very good topics, I think, and very relevant ones.
Great topics, very relevant for today's day and age. And the topic we're going to cover today is just a brief introduction into an incredible free webinar that Dennis and Phil Escott is hosting. Tell us a little bit about Phil.
Yeah, Phil, I stumbled across him about 4 years ago in relation to some health things on his YouTube channel, and his perspectives are always really, really on point. And he's got some, he actually was a chronic health sufferer himself with chronic arthritis, and he at one stage thought he was going to die. And he implemented, I guess, years and years of research that he undertook himself, and he ended up curing a so-called incurable condition. And now he uses that knowledge that he has to help thousands of other people to do the same things with very, very incredible results. So I'm really excited to collaborate with him and use, I guess, my mainstream type framework to bridge that gap between that more alternative stuff. And I think there's a really great synergy and a good overlap between what myself and Phil do.
So what you're telling me is that Phil was diagnosed with chronic illness and disease, which was incurable, and he's gone on and cured it.
Correct. Yep.
The world has turned upside down and on its head, everybody. This is really exciting because we get to discover not just this case of Phil Escott, but many cases, stories we're going to hear from Dennis and firsthand experience of people actually resolving and healing, transforming and changing their own life story, their own experience from incurable to healed, cured, resolved, connected back in.
Well, kind of. Because if we say, or if you and I say that we are going to cure a disease, especially cancer, that could put you or me in jail.
Whoa.
Yes.
That's scary.
Yep.
So cancer is incurable?
Technically speaking and legally speaking, yes.
Wow.
But is it really incurable? That's a whole other story.
Great question.
That's a whole other story.
So we're really going to unpack some of these deeper questions in this conversation, and I just want to invite you to please like this video if you got something out of it. If you didn't like it, no problems, leave us a comment. We'll respond to those comments and refine this conversation a little more critically and articulate exactly what we're trying to convey in this message. And please hit the bell notification so the next time we do one of these conversations, you'll be instantly notified. But moving on, let's also talk about this webinar that you got coming up on Sunday with Phil Escott, who's based in the UK. This is a great opportunity for people. Why?
So this is a really nice little intro into, I mean, we've got such concern, I think, globally with health, and many people are just living in this constant fear state, and it just so happens that this fear state about pandemics and I guess our health information and safety for our families and our loved ones can not only bring on the symptoms of chronic health conditions, but it actually can exacerbate or make chronic health conditions quite a lot worse. And again, we've talked about this before in some other chats about how being in a state of fear compromises blood flow to your stomach, and your stomach is the kind of engine for wellness and immunity. So the idea with this webinar is to reach, and we've got a lot of people who've signed up, so thank you guys for anybody who's watching this who has actually signed up for that. But the idea is to break some of that stuff down, some of the simple components down, that anybody can undertake and start a journey towards, I guess, improving their lives if they have a chronic health condition, or maybe avoiding the pitfalls if their body is just at that tipping point. And unfortunately, when it comes to many chronic diseases, your body's always trying to help you out, and it's just trying, and we're throwing horrible foods into our bodies, and we're working in jobs we don't like, and we're exposing ourselves to different lights and chemicals and toxicities. And it's only at that stage when we are keeping on adding to the stress in our bodies that we then, something comes along, and it's almost the metaphor of the straw breaking the camel's back is really accurate. And when we hit that point, everything collapses, and this is where we have these very nasty diseases and conditions eventuating. So in a beautiful situation, we would be delivering information to as many people as possible. If they're close to that breaking point, how to pull back from it and start reversing and start helping your body out when it's screaming at you and it's saying, hey, listen, I'm really struggling now. I need to take a break from all the stress. And that's the idea, is we give people and empower them. We give them information to pull back and to try to repair, essentially.
Awesome, and I love what you're saying, how the body knows how to heal. And you touched on, this element of fear, overriding fear that holding people back. But is there some other chronic diseases, maybe like stress or fatigue, or these other elements that could be beneficial for people? Depression is what we're going to talk about today. What are some of these other chronic diseases that people may not directly associate with, but are really underlying into the chronic disease that they're experiencing?
Sure, and there's some interesting perspectives from people a lot cleverer than me, and I like to think that what I do, I don't really picture myself as the expert who knows all about these things, but I consider myself a bridge to deliver information from people who are quite brilliant in their fields. And there's one doctor who I really enjoy listening to. He's a Dr. John Bergman, and his breakdown of what stress is fantastic. So he breaks it down into 3 different domains, I guess. And we think of stress as this psychological thing, but if we actually break it down into the fact that it's psychological, physiological, and toxic. And if you address those 3 areas, you can, I think, pull back a lot from areas of chronic disease. And depression, there's a lot of people who have depression diagnosed along with a chronic disease. But I mean, if you kind of think of it, if you are suffering, let's say, with chronic arthritis or bowel problems or any kind of chronic disease symptoms, that is going to upset your mind, and that's going to bring your mood down. So is that 2 different diseases going on, or is this a natural response? I mean, it's kind of normal to be really depressed if you think you're going to die. So there is a massive overlap. And the other thing which people don't realize is that...
Can I just pause you there?
Please,
sorry?
yeah.
So just to repeat what you said, people find themselves depressed because they know they're going to die. Or could you elaborate on that a little bit?
So there's 2 kind of little things happening, okay? And what I like to kind of pull it back to is that the powerhouse of all our health is in your stomach. And this is actually where you also produce a thing called serotonin, which is the thing that makes you happy. So is it the fact that you are actually psychologically depressed because you have a chronic disease condition, or is it the fact that the engine, which is meant to be supporting your whole body, is compromised, and that's actually causing a depression itself? And personally, I am steering way towards the latter scenario, not the idea that people, I mean, it is obviously quite depressing if you think that you're going to die or if you're in pain all the time, but there's another factor, and that is the thing that helps your mood is severely compromised.
Yeah, well, there you have it, folks. I mean, depression is something that seems to be very real in today's world. It's something I've experienced on mild terms, but when I open up the conversation with people about mental health, how is your mental health, and just communicating what's going on, because in Australia it's common, like, hey mate, how you going? And it's a simple answer, good, okay, fine, but you don't really unpack and unravel. And so when I often ask people, hey, how's your mental health at the moment, people get a little bit shocked at first when I ask that question, but then they start really unpacking a little bit, all this internal chatter. I don't know how to navigate all these inner voices and all this stuff going on for them, maybe not feeling a little bit anxious and depressed and nervous and not wanting to socialize or be out there, or kind of like just having trouble navigating the current circumstance of the world that we find ourselves in. And given the fact we are in Australia, an extremely privileged, little bubble compared to most parts of the world, like England right now, who are still, really stuck in their homes.
Yeah.
It's I can only just imagine the turmoil, the inner turmoil, the tumultuous kind of conversations that's going on inside of people's minds. And this webinar is going to give people the tools, the knowledge, the information so they're able to navigate, empower themselves to navigate through these challenging experiences.
Absolutely. And the thing which I think is to pull up a little bit away from depression specifically, the incredible kind of thing is that there's numerous stories of people all over the world, including people I know personally, who were diagnosed with debilitating and chronic incurable diseases, who no longer have those diseases.
Wow.
And the mechanisms remain the same. It's about pulling away toxicity. Mm-hmm. And again, just to talk about the Cancer Act from 1937 in England, which was...
what is that exactly?
Essentially, that was something that came through, that was passed in Parliament, which just about outlaws people saying they can cure cancer. And the idea given behind that was to stop charlatans from suggesting snake oils to help cure people from cancer.
Right.
The more cynical of us, including myself, believe that it is a mechanism by which pharmaceutical industries maybe suppress real and valuable mechanisms that can alleviate some very, very serious diseases. And there's plenty of anecdotal evidence out there, but unfortunately, unless you are under a clinical trial, and if you have a chronic disease and all of a sudden you get cured, you are just a story. And I, again, know many, many people, and they will never be included in data because there was no trial. And this is also another way of just messing up how we look at chronic disease. So technically speaking, those guys who no longer have these chronic diseases don't exist.
Wow. So just to recap that last little piece, 1937 Cancer Act.
Yep.
Basically said outlawed anyone to say they could cure cancer.
Yep.
So if I'm a doctor, a physician, I work in that field, and I found a solution for helping someone overcome one of the most horrific diseases known to modern man today, taking so many lives, and I find something that works, I can't suggest to use this. How does it really work?
Sure. So in the medical system, there are interventions that are legal for things like cancer specifically. And as a doctor, you're allowed to do those things. And if they're successful, you have somebody who is in remission.
Right.
Okay, so, but outside of that system, and all that's allowed, but outside of that system, let's say that, and we have this area of science for once, well, not even science is not quite the right word, but we have this description of something that's called a medical miracle. And these things happen time and time and time again, where people go on these journeys of detoxifying or supplementing with certain things, or alleviating stress, or working on their minds, or using healing techniques, and they return to their doctor and they are symptom-free after having terminal conditions. So these guys exist, we know they're out there, but for the person who treated them to say, I cured that person's disease, they can go to prison.
Wow.
And there's a famous story, well, there's a lot of famous stories, but the one that stands out to my mind is one of, and it's currently underway, of two people, Lynn Tyre and David Noakes, who ended up in a prison in France for working with a thing called GCMAF and having, I think, something like 1,100 stories of people in mid-range to end-stage cancers having their conditions resolving.
Crazy. And you talked about these medical miracles, which, as the terminology suggests, these are medical conditions that have found some miracle to cure, and they've lived happily ever after. Do you have any examples of this?
Absolutely.
What evidence do you have?
So, I've got a very good friend of mine. You've actually met him. He's a spear fisherman. and he was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, and he ended up at the stage in a hospital where he was in hospital for about 3 months of the year, and his last option was to have his bowels ripped out and to have a bag put in his stomach so he could poo into this bag called a colostomy. And when he heard that, he went, no way, and he basically could barely walk. He booked himself out of hospital, and he went on an amazing journey through Southeast Asia on a healing trip. And essentially, after he did take some areas that weren't as good as he would have liked, but essentially after that journey, he no longer has Crohn's disease.
Wow.
And this disease is incurable. It gets better. His sister, a couple of years back, started having exactly the same symptoms, and she went to the specialist in the area that she was in and was diagnosed with the same thing. So she rang Chris up in a panic saying, oh my God, what do I do? What do I do? So he told her his regime, and she wholeheartedly committed to that. And when she went back to this top doctor, gastrointestinal doctor, he compared the before and after scans, and he's informed her that your symptoms have disappeared. I've never seen anything like this before. What did you do? She said, I did X, Y, and Z, which were the things that Chris told her about. And he said, no, it's not that. And she said, I assure you it is. And he argued with her, so she got up and left.
Wow.
So technically speaking, those two people, who I know, are either liars or there's something else going on.
Yeah, super interesting. And what would your suggestion be to, open people's minds around these miracles? Are they just the outlier, odd situation, circumstance that, this unique opportunity of people cure this disease? Or is there something more going on that we can't quite fathom or explain through the physical, through these kind of very rigid systems that we've set up in place for a long time now, and we haven't quite maybe evolved those institutionalized, indoctrinated ways of providing evidence or examples to cure, some of these chronic diseases?
Great question. This is something I do courses on as well. And it's the power of something called the placebo effect and the nocebo effect. And lots of my previous videos on my YouTube, I actually go into this in a little bit more detail. But essentially, there are people who, if they have enough belief in their doctor or their healer or somebody who's helping them, chronic conditions can disappear. Mm-hmm. But the opposite is also true. So if people, and there's two examples in Western medical literature of people who had chronic and terminal cancer diagnosis, okay? And these are two separate instances where they were both given around 6 months to live, and they died within that 6 month period.
Yeah.
On autopsy, neither had liver cancer.
Whoa.
And literally, hearing that they had 6 months to live and they had a terminal disease, they manifested the symptoms without having the cancer, and they died within that period of time. And this is called, we can use two terms in this. We can call it, one of the terms is medical hexing, and the other is the nocebo effect. So we have to be very careful about taking a diagnosis, because the taking and accepting of a diagnosis and the full belief in it can actually make you incredibly sick. And the reverse is true. The taking and the belief in healing and wellness can actually help any chronic condition. It is very, very incredible stuff.
So you're telling me if I went to the doctor tomorrow and they found that I had something wrong with my liver, well, you got a cancer in your liver, but I told myself over and over again that I am fit, healthy, well, and whole, that I could potentially cure that.
Potentially, yeah, that's actually true. There are other little pieces to the puzzle. There are little pieces in the puzzle there, but essentially there is some weird thing that goes on with both the placebo effect and the nocebo effect that it works.
I love it.
It works.
I love it. Fantastic. Yeah, and I'm sure there's so much more that goes into in terms of lifestyle and
yes,
and diet choice and exercise and sunlight exposure and all the things that we've spoken about in previous conversations. And great little lead-in, guys. If you would like to see those conversations, just check the link in the description section on Earth Heroes TV. We have a huge catalog, essentially, of videos of these discussions where we really unpack that with Dennis some of the more medical understandings, but break it down into simple terms. I am just a normal human being, everyday person, just like you listening to this right now, and have learnt so much in just opening up the dialogue and the conversation to realize what it takes to go through a collective transformation on a personal inner level, and how I can optimize my human health to make the most out of my life, why I am alive. In the last video, we talked about life and death. We explored that comprehension of coming face to face with death to actually really be alive. And these are some great conversations to open up the mind, but also drop into the heart to feel into what actually matters most to us in the world. And are we truly living our best lives? Are we doing what we dream of doing? And it seems that with so much going on in the world, life could perish at any moment. Yet we're all still here, we're all still breathing, we're having this conversation, we're inviting you to come along the journey with us. And a great opportunity is this Sunday to drop in person with Phil Escott, with Dennis O'Connor, drop into the seminar, really unpack some of these deeper, complex psychological, biological, physiological notions, but just to practice them, know it fully, embody it. And is there a magic pill out there, Dennis, for these people to take home, or is it a consistent long-term journey?
Maybe it's a bit of both. But I think if you are feeling full of joy, full of love, full of gratitude, you could probably just get through anything. And then if you are getting attacked from all these different areas, with your job, and you're not happy, you can make moves and put things into place to maybe try to take yourself away. And I know examples of people who are working in their job and they are absolutely stressed, and they're going to the doctor and they're wondering what's wrong. And I really question, is it worth this financial security if you are going to run yourself into the ground but through worry and stress because you hate what you're doing? So I think for every one of us, every so often, we have to just maybe put the brakes on, have a pause. And if we are sitting in a place that's not optimal and we're not happy and we're really struggling, maybe it's time for a change.
Great suggestion, man. This has been a wonderful conversation. Guys, just want to invite you again. This is the last opportunity to join for Sunday. You must register. Click the link to register, and you'll get the notification, the emails to join the live chat, the live conversation, free webinar with Dennis and with Phil Escott. And if you want to watch the previous videos, as well as many upcoming live stream events on Earth Heroes TV, also subscribe. There's a monthly option or the yearly option. I want to thank you, Dennis, for your time. Appreciate having these conversations.
Pleasure as always.
There's so much more we can unpack in these conversations. And of course, I just want to thank you guys for joining us, for watching. And I just want to invite you one last time. If you like this video, please leave us a like, leave us a comment, subscribe, and even get notified for more upcoming videos around the corner, where Dennis and I, we talk about all things health, wellness, being alive. What does it mean to be human? What else do we cover?
Sometimes we take a bit of a deep dive into what is true and what is not.
Big dive.
A big dive.
Nose first. Thanks so much, Dennis.
Awesome.
Thanks a lot, guys. See you next week.